Well, hello, that's me again. Today is December the 30th, 2024. We're counting down this crazy, insane year. And as was with the last video, it's sort of summary, not quite summary, but summary nonetheless, about the situation in the world. And I do not like those broad brushes, generalizations, but there are some generalizations which are not only warranted, but they are irresistible and inevitable. And let's start with the good old, it's actually a Russian fairy folk tale, but actually it is present in other nations one way or another. In Russian version, it is the man, the peasant, and the bear who actually grow all kinds of cultures, agriculture, so it could be turnips or what have you, or carrots, and you probably saw this. And this is the roots and the tops, as you can say yourself. And if you want to characterize 2024, you may easily discern here who are on the right, who says like, oh, all those, tops, beautiful, just lush and all that. And on the left, of course, this is Russia. Yeah, not much, show off, or this is not how Russians operate, but you can see yourself the harvest, who will be fed really well. We know that. And this is the main conclusion of this year, albeit it also, projects itself across the whole spectrum of things, and of course including the special military operation, which defines actually the present situation globally, and it defines it in terms of strategy, in terms of technology, in terms of politics, of everything essentially. War is the father of everything, as you know. Yeah. And but let's take a look at something which many people are still interested. Ilham Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, actually came out with a rather stern statement, without even waiting for the end result of the investigation about the crash of the Azal flight, which crashed essentially in Aktau in Kazakhstan. He accused Russia and made some demands, which is understandable. Do not forget, Mr. Aliyev and Azerbaijan in general has a very strong Turkish influence, and Turks think that they are really good players. They are not. But the point is here, obviously, including obviously for the internal consumption, made those statements. But there is a very interesting thing which I specifically pointed out to, I believe, the last two videos, that there was what is called cover or carpet state of the all airports in Caucasus, in Russian Caucasus, and that means what? They were closed. There was a very low fog, and then of course we know that the attack of the drones started. So in this case, as was the case with Mr. Kaczynski and his tragic flight to Smolensk, you remember 2010, I believe, despite the actually that's the whole thing. Per those whatever international air routes, rules, whatever, and if there are some pilots, they will know, they will correct me. But actually, it is the chief pilot of the aircraft, which decides what to do, despite warnings from the tower. And this is exactly what had happened, and for some reason this tragic flight was doing this 3 times, trying to attempt to land in Grozny, while essentially Grozny airport has been closed. Why they were doing this, I don't know. So anyhow, but what is the funniest thing about it? I don't know even if it's true. I picked it up from the internet, and you know what? Correct me if it is. Not true, but I mean, this is pretty startling. We have the British saying that, this is Sky News, evidently. UK rejects Putin apology over deadly Azerbaijan Airlines plane crash. The Russian president has apologized to his Azerbaijani counterpart for what he called a tragic incident, but stopped short of taking responsibility. The UK has rejected Vladimir Putin apology. The question is, where is UK and where is Azerbaijan? So, but the fact that these guys, I mean, these chihuahuas, I mean, basically, and again, they're practically all UK media and elite are inbred imbeciles. Why would they come up with this? It just, yeah, sure, what are they going to do about it? How about they attack Russia and see what happens to them? But yeah, this is what they are, this is what they do. But in the end, as with the situation with the roots and the tops and this, well, meme with the two rabbits, but I mean it's usually peasant and the bear, you can already start kind of deducting on what is happening more or less when you look attentively at the whole state of the affairs, especially for the combined West, and suddenly change in the rhetoric of Mr. Trump, which was predicted by me and many others, that the guy basically, blows the hot air about, stopping the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, which of course is impossible, because as Mr. Lavrov, and this is where it all becomes very interesting, Mr. Lavrov yesterday comes out and says very clearly that, you see, 29th of December, that Russia is not satisfied with the proposal of the team of US President-elect Donald Trump, suggesting to postpone Ukraine's membership in NATO for 20 years and introduce EU and British peacekeepers there, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated. It was reported by all major media, and the question remains, why they even continue to talk like this? Well, simple as that, for the internal consumption, period. Russia is not going to negotiate anything with Trump, let alone with this, his Mr. Kellogg envoy, who, well, I'm sorry, the guy is not even in the same league. And what is most importantly, as we go back to this, the tops and the roots fairy tales, this is what now the military balance is, and this is what Russia actually relates to United States in terms of the military capability, of which I've warned for more than 10 years that, guys, you do not even understand what you are getting yourself into. And to demonstrate to you, apart from the fact that something else is coming on January 17th, well, it's going to be present, I guess, to Mr. Trump and a bunch of neocons he still keeps around. It has been confirmed that, and it was confirmed again by Mr. Lavrov nonetheless, that the new agreement between Russia and Iran will enshrine the desire of Moscow and Tehran to cooperate in the field of security and defense. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with RIA News. It was 29th of December. So, and he says that, of course, such a comprehensive document also has international component. Among other things, it pays special attention to strengthening cooperation in the interest of peace and security at the regional and global levels, and enshrines the desire to Moscow and Tehran to closer cooperation in the field of security, defense, the fight against terrorism and extremism, countering many other common challenges and threats. Essentially, on the 17th of January 2025, which is coming, 3 days before Mr. Trump should take the Oval Office, Iran and Russia will sign military alliance. Not just economic, but military alliance. And that has major ramifications for all this mess which is happening in the Middle East from the, basically United States and Israel and all those chihuahuas from Europe. They basically inspired it. They precipitated it. And that brings us a little bit to the issue of Syria and Russian bases. You see, I've been on record for the last, since the fall of the Assad government, I said that, don't rush to any conclusions. Don't look at some videos, snippets of 5-6 seconds, something Russians moving some S-300 or what have you, somewhere. They mean absolutely nothing. Russia's Khmeimim and Tartus bases operate pretty much in normal regime, and then suddenly we have this. Well, that is really interesting, and how can I put it politely? They are not going to get anything about bases of Russia in Syria, because even this dude, suddenly he is all civilized and he doesn't, cut heads of anybody. But guess what? New Syrian leader wants close ties with Russia. Speaking of Moscow's military bases, yesterday in the country, Ahmed al-Shara has said Damascus has strategic interest with one of the world powers. And so he said that we don't want Russia to exit Syria in a way that would not be befitting for its long-standing relations with the Middle Eastern nation, the HTS chief emphasized. Well, we'll see where it all goes, but Russian bases for now stay there, and the Russians themselves can confirmed that, yeah, we are in the negotiations with the new Syrian powers that be. But again, you have to keep in mind, Syria is becoming the arena of the, my gosh, it's gonna be it's already bloody mess, and evidently there are some, enclaves or clusters of whatever villages and cities where former Syrian Arab army operates, and there are all other kinds of forces in play, and of course those people have to understand, and they do, some of them understand. Russia has military bases there. That means, as Mr. Kartapolov, Lieutenant General, stated very clearly, they are in themselves fortresses. They defend themselves if need be, and they can defend it. So, well, what can I say? We have to wait and see, but that's another interesting development, which certainly doesn't go per script. They expected Russians to fight for for Assad's government, but it didn't happen because Russians didn't want to have anything to do with it, and they just keeping for now holding on to those pieces of land which have been essentially signed to Russia for the next 49 years. We'll see where it all goes. But speaking again about the roots and the tops, I love internet. I love internet because it maintains all kinds of the records, and obviously it keeps the record of whatever I wrote. And 8.5 years ago, look what I wrote. And this is precisely about this, the roots and the tops. I wrote about this in 2016, June 2016, that I was laughing at Boston Globe. Some cretin from Boston Globe, he wrote the piece called Putin's Russia is a poor drunk soccer hooligan. This name is Horst Gilbert. He obviously, as pretty much most of the people who write opinions into the mainstream media in the United States, is moron. And yeah, he's brainwashed. And so that's what he wrote. According to the International Monetary Fund's most recent data, the Russian economy is approximately the same size as Australia and slightly smaller than South Korea. As an exporter, it is now less important than Belgium, Mexico, and Singapore. This was the analytical piece, that's what is called at that time in Boston Globe, one of the major American newspapers, that Putin's Russia is a poor drunk soccer hooligan. And I pointed out then, already in 2016, 8.5 years ago, that, and then comes the sensitive issue of Russia maintaining the second most powerful military of the world. Actually, it's now #1 and by far. This is where all those economic comparisons, economic being in quotation marks, and indices break down completely. Russia can produce and does produce state-of-the-art submarines, fighter jets, air defense complexes, and other extremely high-tech things. And so I'm talking about that actually research and development, design, and then manufacturing and procurement of such a weapon system as S-400 or fighter jet of Su-35 type, as an example, require academic, scientific, industrial, and other resources which are beyond the reach of overwhelming majority of nation and cannot be merely expressed in some economic numbers, which are primarily numbers in dollars, which absolutely meaningless. A single state-of-the-art SSGM, cruise missile submarine of Syeradvinsk class, requires a cutting-edge industry to be designed and produced, from advanced materials, advanced radio electronics, industry, and so on. Then I, of course, present this the shysters. I mean, they're a bunch of morons from Stockholm, that according to data compiled by Stockholm International Peace Institute, it's basically a shyster organization. It's the same as all those think tanks, and you know what, for people who consume this garbage which they publish, I mean, it's their problem, you know. So that you say Russia's defense budget is still less than China and Saudi Arabia. It is roughly on par with India, France, and United Kingdom, and it is 9 times smaller than the Pentagon's budget. The fact is, if it wasn't for Syria, the Crimea, and some aging warheads, Russia would get as much global attention as Slovakia or perhaps Wales. This is the attitude 8.5 years ago. So, and this was the attitude which drove those so-called strategists, including many in Pentagon, very many cadre US officers, many of whom are really not that cadre. Many of them have no actual military education, and they go through ROTC and officers candidate schools, and then they get into the some kind of the, you know, type of the system and template of the operation, and they think that they know about warfare or the world. They don't. And we already saw it beautifully demonstrated in the special military operation. Well, if not for the tragic result of, if we can go and take a look at the numbers, which of course you can see yourself, this armed forces of Ukraine personnel losses, I mean, yesterday. And we can see yourself on the left side how we're ticking to 1 million. And this is, again, as I already stated, by the utterly conservative numbers by the Russian Defense Ministry. So yeah, that tells you everything you need to know. And so, for example, to the Mr. Gilmer who wrote this drivel, and he's not alone, make no mistake, take anybody from the US media or from the think tanks like RAND or from Heritage Foundation, they have no clue, including those people. Oh, I've been to Iraq, you know, Afghanistan a couple times. Okay, sure. Do you understand how the forces are created? Do you understand what continental warfare is? No, not some, you know, expeditionary police operation, sometimes even of the medium level intensity, such as in Afghanistan. No, they don't. They don't. Not all of them. There are a few of them. For example, like people I know, like Colonel Daniel Davis, you know, the Scott Ritter, and people who grasp this, of course. I'm talking about purely military people. But most don't. They do not understand what is happening. And when you go back to my article from 8.5 years ago, and it was even before I published my first book, I was already screaming essentially, Jews, you do not understand what you're dealing with. Already then, the Russian economy, not by any garbage and metric produced by the International Monetary Fund, which is an American-driven organization, essentially. No, it already was larger than the economy of Germany, which at that time was supposedly at the peak of its might. So, but you cannot convey this to those people. And what is very interesting, that's why they do not understand warfare. They do not understand what standing continental armies are, how they produce the culture, which is dramatically different from, for example, whatever US army has. And you cannot breach this cultural gap, at least en masse. You cannot breach this cultural gap even by the US military professionals. As the result, you have Breedloves, you have Petreuses, you have Kellogg's, you have Kins, all those, you have Miley's. Those people have no clue. And of course, they never fought real war in their life. And whatever they fought, they lost. And so when you explain that the real war is the primarily industrial war, and Daniel Davis, well, yeah, it's kind of, he quotes this Captain Obvious Mr. Mr. Vershinin. And he writes about, you know what, yeah, I think some people read my books, okay? And they probably read Svechin too, you know. Attrition wars require their own art of war and are fought with the force-centric approach. Oh God, yeah, unlike wars of maneuver, which are the terrain focused. Yeah, United States doesn't know what real wars of maneuver are. That's the whole other story, yeah, against Iraqi army, sure. They are rooted in massive industrial capacity to enable the replacement of losses, geographical depths to absorb a series of defeats, and technological conditions that prevent rapid ground movement. Well, Russians can move rapidly, they just don't have to. And in attritional wars, military operations are shaped by states' ability to replace losses and generate new formations, not tactical and operational maneuvers. The side that accepts the attritional nature of war and focuses on destroying enemy forces rather than gaining terrain is most likely to win. Yeah, this is is the war. This is how it fights. No, there is no such thing as a maneuvering warfare as it is envisioned by Hollywood and basically graduates of the U.S. Academy, U.S. Military Academy of the West Point, who watched a little bit too much of a pattern. If they want to see maneuverable warfare, how about they look at the Eastern Front in World War II? There is the maneuverable warfare of the scale, which United States is not even in the same vicinity. And yet these guys continue to study something which they beat the crap out of the 5-year-old kid in the sandbox of the under-equipped, semi-literate army of Saddam, and yet they think that, oh, it's maneuverable warfare. Well, I don't think so. They will be able to fight real maneuverable warfare in the 21st century. And here we have, after what I explained, in terms of the industrial capacity, in terms of the real continental warfare, United States never fought it. So simple as that. That always, whatever United States fought, it was always expeditionary, including Vietnam, for example, let alone the cluster coitus in Afghanistan, which is not a real per se war. It's not combined arms war. It was expeditionary police operation. But if you take a look attentively at what I constantly preach, and I talk about I don't know, since very many years ago, industrial capacity and how it shapes the war. This is, for example, latest data about Russian military and Russian military personnel in Ukraine. Oh, look at this. Somebody has to show this to Mr. Trump about the 600,000 Russians killed. As you can see yourself, Russians went in with 180,000 troops into Ukraine, being outnumbered at least 1 to 2. In reality, more 1 to 3. And guess what? Throughout the 2.5, well, mostly 3 years, it's now almost 700,000 personnel. And Russians received every month more than 30,000 volunteers. And there are other standing armies. We don't know the actual number. I believe at least 700,000 in the rear, which are trained and ready for any contingency. And, well, what can I say? This is how the military operations are planned and looked at, and this is your famous Lanchester. And as you can see yourself, if you know what I'm talking about Osipov Lanchester model of the attrition, which is formed by immense number of indices, real indices, which define the, well, basically correlation of forces and means. And you can see yourself that on the right side, when you look attentively at the combat efficiencies, alpha, you see, in Russian will be in red, the green is Ukraine. As you can see yourself, what happens, essentially Ukraine, which is not NATO force, is going to be ground into the meat grind, you know. So, and as a result, we have the ground meat, and they don't have any more real resources to throw at, and this is just happens if you take the clean cut model and you increase the combat efficiency of the red 6 times. So it's not 6 times. In reality, as we already know, the kill ratios are horrendous. They are something like 1 to 12 now, and yeah, when you have that thing, why Russians should really run and kill more of its personnel when those amateurs from Pentagon and, those NATO, generals and, admirals, they throw the meat into the grinder, and Russians gladly oblige. And at this stage, correctly, we are looking at the necessity to mobilize 18-year-old kids in Ukraine. So let them try. But then again, you cannot explain this to all those so-called experts, 90% of them at least, in US and Western military political talk, because they don't have toolkit to understand the real war. They don't. They don't teach the real war in West Point or US, General Staff and Command College. What they teach, there's some kind of the narrations of the successful campaigns, which are completely taken out of the context, and they study them. Well, good luck, applying those lessons. They applied them, you see, and as in these fairy tales of the, roots and the tops, guess whose carrot is larger, stronger, and wider? Well, so I'm not going to go there, with those things. We know the result. And this is just one of the demonstrations to what I've been writing for very many years. So, and that is one of the benefits that people in my discussion blogs, in my discussion boards, in my blog, carry in all kinds of the snippets, so to speak, and information and headlines and things of this nature, which helps me too. So we have now this bunch of the economist imbeciles. An economist, that's the London, publication. Supposedly they are really not, very competent. They are not, but here they are. So they talk about this. Is the age of American air superiority coming to an end? The growing effectiveness of air defense systems could blunt the West's most powerful weapons. It's very misleading. Extremely misleading headline in Economist for a simple reason, because actually it's not coming to an end. It's already, and it has already ended, and it has already ended roughly 10 years ago. And because obviously they do not understand that in a real war they will have to fight not just the air defense. Evidently, for some reason, they forget now the best combat air force in the world by far, which is of course Russian Air Force, which boasts and number of the fifth and 4++ generation aircraft, hundreds of them actually, which are state of the art, and they boast the weapon system. United States cannot even touch them. Look just at R-37 alone, with the range of up to 400 kilometers. And you can look at the combat operations which of the Su-57s and Su-35s, and if you discount all this propaganda, which of course United States Air Force loves to use Kiev propaganda, because it's actually it's kind of palliative effect. It's a therapy, because they need to admit that what Russians do in the air, United States is not capable to maintain even the basically operational tempo of such operations, and they will not actually be able to deploy their air forces before they will be shut down from the air without even seeing what hit them. So, and when you look at this attention, when you look at air defense, of course, strike packages, my gosh, can you imagine? Yeah, does the United States have 8,000+ kilometer range cruise missiles? No, Russians using them already. They are deployed in the first line. Of course, hypersonics. We're not gonna go there. I've been on that so much. And then suddenly, when you put that all together and you look at this intensively, even morons from the media, and even Mr. Trump begin to admit that, yeah, things are more complex than that. Of course they are. They always were. It's just that, when, as General Latif of DARPA, 20 years, PhD in physics, that most of what American politicians and public know about war is from entertainment industry. So they thought that they can play Hollywood thing. No. And they failed. And as one of the texts which some people on my discussion boards provided me, it's I don't know, it's called Geopolitique or whatever, the magazine or blog. And here is a very good, basically, deciphering of this BS which is happening right now in this, in Pentagon, in Washington, in Langley, and there are no real Russia specialists there, but look at this. It's a large article, you can go and read it, but Russians know what they're doing. On the contrary, the West, confusing vague aspirations with the real strategy, failed to understand that the Russians were trying to do and treated every Russian setback or supposed setback as a step on the road to victory without looking at the big picture. Jacques Beau, my friend, Colonel Jacques Beau of the Swiss intelligence, he talks about this. We were talking about this for decades now. They do not understand the big picture because obviously they never ever started war. And so here it is. Let us take a simple example. Since the beginning of the war, Russian strategy has been to provoke specific political changes in Ukraine by degrading and destroying Ukrainian forces. And now, yesterday, or today, Mr. Lavrov says that, no, we're not going to be talking about whatever Trump proposes. That tells you what? Russians will finish off whatever the armed forces are remaining in Ukraine. And for some reason, people are still thinking that Russians somehow tie things to some specific dates or political event in the West. Of course, I mean, Russians understand that Biden administration, leaving, will create a mayhem and probably will try to elicit some crazy response from Russia. But no, Russians understand that, believe me. But what can I say? You cannot explain to those people. You are actually pups, in the cage, essentially. And Russians just stand outside and prodding you with the stick. And those people, yeah, they have no clue. And so that's what he explains. The second reason is that insofar as Russia has territorial objectives, it is preferable to degrade Ukrainian forces to the point where they cannot defend territory and must withdraw preemptively or after a superficial defense rather than launch deliberate attacks to seize territory. The Russians have a range of technologies that allow them to weaken the Ukrainian forces from a position far behind the line of contact. Yes, this is what I was preaching for the last, essentially 3 years. They do not understand the technological superiority of Russia and escalation dominance. The United States has nothing left to escalate to, with the exception of their nuclear threshold. Russians have all of it, and they can respond conventionally to anything. And again, as I already stated, Russians, which is correctly stated by very many, Russians are not into the conquest of the territory. It's only in the movies of people who do not understand, for example, what World War II was and what was the role of the United States in the war in Europe after essentially Wehrmacht and the Axis have been defeated by Russians, by the Red Army in 1944, was they think that, oh yeah, we move, maneuver, things like that. No, guys. Yeah, you can maneuver like Operation Bagration, 1.75 million people on the front with the breadth of 600 miles, basically annihilating the Army Group Center. Well, U.S. Army doesn't have anything comparable in its history at all. It's just beyond their experiences. There is no what is called a reference point or reference point. And so, yeah, it's all about annihilation of whatever the force NATO will throw at Russia. And Russia today has total escalation dominance and can face any kind of not just army, but combinations of armies. And this is what this year proved beyond the reasonable doubt. And they are shaking from horrors, many of those professionals who both hate Russia but understand what they are witnessing. They are witnessing total military and economic defeat of the combined West. And that is how this year is, or was, if you wish. And this is what I wanted to tell you guys today. And as always, those who like what I do, guys, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee too. And that will allow me to continue, into the next year, which is not far away. And I want to wish you, all of you, Happy New Year and hopefully some kind of peaceful skies above us. And we'll see how it will go. But what I want to say is all happiness, all warmth to you guys and everything you wish to, to wish yourself. So that will be my message, the last message in this year. So I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.